2-minute warning.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages. Only a few people knew that reference. Okay.
Ladies and
Okay.
yes.
So we're delighted to start
of
session
circus.
4, and we will pay close attention.
Oh, that's it then, eh?
Anything more to be said?
No, I thought that you. I thought you were going to get a copy.
He wants to hear yesterday's introduction again.
Oh yes, that was really, really nice. Yeah.
Well, I will get it.
No, yes, you might want to do
Ladies and
that.
gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome this morning for the second session, the second day, our beloved, extraordinary workshop leader.
Yeah.
You all may know him from such episodes as Demons and the Early Modern Period.
That's right.
Today he'll be speaking on and concluding in 3 sessions our discussion of the tree.
The tree. Thank you. I can't believe you.
J.A. Chajes.
Yay! I can't believe you all came back. That is really touching.
Because you didn't plan for the second day's talk?
Not as much. I did peter out a little bit, if I'm honest. But I also know that the material today a little bit better. Today will be different, which I guess is good. A little bit different at least. We have some real manuscripts to look at today. And some real facsimiles and a real PowerPoint. I think there'll be, perhaps because I'll spend more time with the materials out, opportunities to look closely and satisfy your curiosities as they may be. I should probably not make any promises, but thinking about the sessions as they're going and what I hope to accomplish today, I have in mind the possibility that I could devote a part of session 4 already to beginning my treatment of the Lurianic material. In other words, I may not use my entire 2 hours on this, as much as I love it, and I'm sure you'll find it fascinating. I maybe somewhat artificially divided the 6 sessions into 6 distinct themes. And it could be that because session 4 is very much a kind of grand finale of session 3, and it doesn't. I would normally treat it as part of the same storyline. It's the kind of the this is where the efflorescence of Ilanot making in Italy circa 1500 reaches its full. Did I start with efflorescence? I want to make sure I don't mix my metaphors. It's full flowering. This is the one to rule them all, but it is very much in the tradition of the Ilanot that we saw yesterday, particularly the Khalfan Ilan, the Hepburn, Egidio de Viterbo, Caterina de Medici Ilan. And it wasn't created in a vacuum. It was created in a place and at a time in which such a thing would have been conceivable. Even if this is kind of a masterpiece that shines brighter than the others that you've seen thus far. In any case, because it is part of that same story, we may find that it suits our purposes better to give it an hour and then begin our discussion of the Lurianic material before season. It feels like a season before session 5. I sent you an article. I know some of you diligently did your homework, and if you didn't, in any case, you have access to these things. One of the articles that I sent was very, very recently published as part of the catalog for the Renaissance Speaks Hebrew exhibition in Ferrara. I mentioned the exhibition just yesterday. In that article, I reference some correspondence that was found in the Vatican archives a little more than a decade ago by a person who's worked in the Vatican archives for many years and published a couple of books on the basis of his archival research. It's on page 182 of the original publication, page 22 of the PDF, and reference to, it's this guy Goldberg, 2011. It's a book called something like Benedetto Blandis, and I should remember the name of the title off the top of my head, but let's see. Not now. It's Goldberg. Hold on, that's not where I meant to look. Sylviane Goldberg. Lots of Goldbergs on my computer. Goldberg, 2011. Yeah, Jews and Magic in Medici, Florence, The Secret World of Benedetto Blanis. And I don't want to get involved with the whole book, but something interesting that he found in the archives and makes mention of in the book is this correspondence between a Jew, this Jew Benedetto Blanis, and a Medici patron, Don Giovanni di Medici. And the correspondence is a kind of back and forth about a tree that this Medici wants a copy of. He saw a copy of this thing, and he wants one. And his Jewish, I don't know what to call him exactly, but this
Interlocutor.
But probably there's some kind of patronage going on between them. It promises that he's going to take care of this for him. This is just a snippet from that correspondence, in which Benedetto Blanis writes to the Medici, Don Giovanni di Medici, "I am delighted to have so important a tree of Kabbalah here in Florence, brought from Lippiano at my request. I'm having it copied on vellum with great diligence, so it will not be inferior to the original in any way, but even better. I hope that this tree will please your most illustrious excellency, and that we may be able to enjoy it together." Now, I cannot say with complete certainty that the tree to which he has referred here is a witness of the family of manuscripts to which Session 4 is largely devoted, but of all of the Ilanot that I've seen, it seems to me to be the best candidate. And it also is the case that, as opposed to all of the Ilanot I've shown you, and that I know from this period, it's the only one that we know of that was copied repeatedly from the early 16th century well into the 17th century. And if you believe the some of the paleographical opinions of Malachi Beit Aryeh and Richler, they will say even into the 18th century there were copies being made of this. And in the booklet that I prepared for you, because the artifacts themselves are so large, I simply may do for now with on page 22 a bird's eye view, you might say, of some of the most significant witnesses of this manuscript family, witnesses of both complete Ilanot and fragments. And I have on the Prezi, which I've prepared for this morning, you'll be able to see them in greater detail. And as I've said to a few people who've asked, I see no particular reason why I can't share the Prezi with you. So this will also afford you opportunities should you wish to inspect them in greater detail. I think it's probably a good time to move to the Prezi rather than just make do with this. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so on the Prezi we'll be able to see them in full resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, full...
As much resolution as you have here?
Yeah, better.
Okay.
Better. These are hard to I mean, these are hard to photograph. The originals are kind of wavy parchment and not very flat, and they are 3 meters or so long. And even if we get a readable image, none of the libraries so far that I've worked with that have these in their collections have these super scanners. I know, for example, I asked for a scan of an Ilan that's in St. Petersburg, and they apparently have some kind of super scanner there that can digitize a long scroll, and they'll send you a TIFF file that's like a gigabyte or something. You have to get a good computer just to open the picture that they send you. On the other, the Vatican has its scroll. They photographed it in 9 sections. The Oxford had photographed it for me in 3 sections. To stitch them together, I mention the sections because ultimately it's nice to stitch it together to get a sense of the overall Ilan. It's an ongoing headache, but I'm working on it. In any case, let me go to the Prezi. Although I'm sort of jumping in, ready to go right into this Magnificent Parchment. That is, by the way, my nickname for it. The Great Parchment was in use because of Sorfati's commentary, which Buzi published in its Latin translation and with the Hebrew transcription, and then I subsequently found on the Oxford Ilan that I showed you yesterday. And this Ilan refers to itself as a Yiri'ah more than once, but without any special name. And if I'm right, then Benedetto Blanis calls it a Kabbalistic tree, but I thought it would be difficult just to say, the name of this is the Kabbalistic tree. So I thought, well, since it may have something to do with maybe at least one Medici thought it was worth acquiring, I'll give it a magnificent Medici appellation. So just to be clear, this is not it doesn't say anywhere on it the Magnificent Parchment. That said, I'm backing up for just a moment to something I said yesterday. I wanted to make sure I showed it to you today, or gave you at least an idea of what I was talking about. I mentioned that once we see certain things show up on Ilanot, they become very become basically standard. It's iconographically speaking, and we didn't really unpack the symbolism of them, although it seems to me that you're probably as well equipped as I am to imagine the symbolic significance of the shulchan and the menorah. I don't have so much to add to what you would undoubtedly know as well. But if you see, for example, in no few examples we have codices that include rather amateurishly drawn diagrams. This is in Munich. Oh, I meant to add I think it's Munich Hebrew manuscript 119. No, silly me. I don't want to give you the wrong number. Munich. Yeah, it is 119. Okay, nice. Happens every once in a while by accident. I'm right. You can see this. When I first visited the Staatsbibliothek and was looking at this manuscript, I thought maybe that it was somebody studying the material in the manuscript and then sort of making an Ilan based on the material in the manuscript as in the course of study. I think now that that's rather unlikely, and it seems to be a reduction copy of a separate Ilan that was still amateurishly copied into this binding, but not directly related to the content of the manuscript. Otherwise, this is a slightly clearer image of what this looks like, and you can see it really has. Oh yeah, of course, has quite a bit in common with what we've seen in the larger Ilanot. You've got the black and white cookie Ein Sof. You have the appellations, the kinuyim of the sfirot inscribed into the medallions. You have some of the very same angelic or divine names. You know this one from your mezuzahs, undoubtedly. Kuzo, bemuchzaz kuzo. Everybody know on the back side of your mezuzah you have a nice magical name like that. Survived the Maimonidean mezuzah purges somehow. If you don't know, kuzo is just the tetragrammaton bumped up a letter. You know, yud turns into kaf and so forth. It's called abgad. Permutation.
Is that on all mezuzot?
Yes,
The back.
Really? Yeah.
it is. Unless you get your mezuzah from like the Jewish Center on a photocopy machine and they just copied the front side. You never know. Sometimes,
It's lower
yeah.
down from Shin Dal and Yud,
And upside down.
and upside down.
Yeah. So, but you have the same iconography. Also quite cool. We saw this. We didn't spend a lot of time looking at it as it was to be found, particularly in the Khalfan Ilan, and we will spend much more time very shortly looking at how it finds expression in this family of Ilanot. But you can see here that Malchut, the lowest of the Sfirot, abuts the Galgal Hasechel, the orb of the intellect, and then we know, there's some Reki'im here, like Ma'on and Aravot, then Saturn and Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, the Moon, and so forth, with some of these breakout images as well. I just wanted to show you, this is you shouldn't think that all of the Ilanot are so pretty, or that they're always on parchment. When we make the shift to the Lurianic material, I'll also show you that this is, there's a whole range from amateurish copies to luxury manuscripts, everything in between.
So this is not parchment, this is,
Well, it's probably rag paper, as I recall. Yeah, it's just a tip. It's a 16th century codex. It's one of the Wittmanstätter volumes. If people are familiar with that, Wittmanstätter was a Christian who was very determined to create a fantastic library and commissioned that copies be made of many books, and he also had access himself. Again, the Gidio de Viterbo shows up not infrequently in these stories. He had access to Egidio's library, and in some cases, we find now in Munich, Egidio's personal copies and Wittmanstätter's copies of, well, he didn't personally copy them, but he had them copied.
and the fold that we're seeing,
Well, I took two separate pictures, and on the Prezi, I just pushed them together.
But
This
they're
is the
not
binding fold.
okay.
The-
So why is it's bound in a?
Just like this. This is how
I
it
see,
looks.
I see.
This is my finger.
So it's an accordion.
This is the book. It's quite, substantial.
Okay.
And I had a nice readable image of this page, and I just manually, without any art.
And do we know who put it into a book?
No, I think it was copied. I think the book, well, from the way it appears on the binding, it seemed to me that it was added after the book was bound, and not added. Like this part of it is glued to the hard binding. It's not sewn in. I'll show you sewn in fold-outs very soon when we get to the Lurianic material, because then it becomes the norm, at least in the beginning of the Lurianic Ilanot, that the norm is you open your book with a fold-out that's sewn into the binding. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to show you before we get going. The other thing is also a bit of late night or early morning, 4 a.m. thing. Like I should show you this as well, and a kind of variation on the theme that I shared with you yesterday of a chicken egg problem of just a slightly different nature. In Munich Hebrew manuscript 112 has some very interesting material. It is also a Wittmanstätter copy. And when how do I do this? Let's see, I go here. Now, very provocative for someone in my line of work to find in the manuscript something that's called Seder HaIlan, which is basically another example of a Perush al Hasfirot. And, whatever, you can see it starts out with some general introductory remarks before it gets involved with telling you about the Sfirot, Daki Kol Echat, Min HaHavayot. Havayot, like Lashon Havaya, Hey Vav Yud Hey, is a term often used in this period to refer to the Sfirot. So, Kol Echat Min HaHavayot, he... what is it? Nish. Something lechaverta, rishona, ushmura, shert, tachtona, whatever. Doesn't really matter. I want to just show you the phenomenon rather than decipher it. Basically, the big point here, before I confuse you with Prezi jumping around, is that almost exactly the same text can be found in these two manuscripts, as well as quite a few others, but this is a simple and striking way of illustrating my point. In Vatican 441, which is a miscellany with quite a few things in it, there are 22 pages, each one of which, actually a bit more than 22, but let's say keep it 22 pages, each one of which has a very schematic Kabbalistic tree with the same 10 sfirot connected by lines, like you can see here. And at the corner of each page, it says Ot. This one says Ot Gimel. This says Ot Daled. This is the page before. You'll see why in a second. I put them out of order. Ot Aleph, Ot Bet. What do we see in these two manuscripts? And we see that either either 112 or its source, if it was copied from a more or less identical manuscript, either this copyist saw a manuscript in which there were 22 Ilanot, in which each Ilan listed all of the kinuyim for each sfirah that begin with a particular letter. So in other words, Od Gimel is, let me give you all the names for Keter that start with a Gimel. And Od Dalet is, let me give you all the names for these sfirot that are associated with Od Dalet. Od Aleph is all the kinuyim of the sfirot that start with Od Aleph. So Tiferet, Abir Yaakov, Zan, Emet, So this is an alphabetized presentation of the kinuyim, of the spherotic appellations, spread across 22.
Is the Seder Ilan also arranged alphabetically?
No, it's arranged according to the sphirot. But what you have to do then is see that he has under Keter, in alphabetical order, all of the kinuyim of Keter and all of 10 sphirot, but only one erech for Keter. So it's all of the Aleph names for Keter, all of the Bet names for Keter, all of the Gimel names for Keter.
So are you saying that there's also sub-alphabetization? Or it's, in other words, it doesn't go Av, does it have to go from Aleph to Aleph Taf? Or within the Aleph, it's just everything?
That's a good question.
I would be surprised.
I don't think that he cared so much about alphabetizing the Alephs in alphabetical order, but you have let me give you the Alephs, let me give you the Bets, let me give you the Gimels,
That's cool.
all under the title of the name of the Sphira. So now.
Does it go, are there actually 22 of these? There are.
Yeah. I didn't put in the Prezi all 4, but like if I open this PDF, can you see this? It begins on this page of the manuscript. What page is that? 98, I guess? Yeah, 98. 999. One after another, one after another. Now it looks quite amateurish.
And do you think this
But-
is in the service of building one of these?
I don't think so.
I mean, they're just like a reference work.
So
It
that's-
says that I want to do the work and get it right, and so that is just like a blueprint, is what I'm saying.
I don't think so. I think that this is a different way, perhaps of some mnemonic advantage, to say I want to.
I was going to say, this has some mnemonic utility
Indeed.
because of the word.
Right, and it is doing that Ilanic function of taking this is one kind of Perush al Eser Sfirot without too much theorizing
Yeah.
about the Sfirot, but providing the names and saying, no, let's present them with the visual aid of 22 alphabetized schematic Ilanot rather than the genre.
And what period are we talking about?
Late 15th century.
Is it at all
Around,
possible?
everything is around 1500 in this area.
Is it possible to speculate that the person in the Kabbalist is doing this
Mm-hmm.
is looking to do some of the kind of work that Abulafia used to do? I mean, meaning with specific letters?
It could
and,
be.
And dividing them for that purpose?
It's a cool idea. I hadn't thought of that, but one thing that is clear, especially once you jump, actually, from the next page in this manuscript, there's a lot of Abulafian material. So this is, Baruch Shekivanta. There's definitely, I don't know whether this is serving,
As soon as you see somebody separating it into 22 categories.
So, there could be multiple, when you think about the gematria is used in different kinds of ways sometimes, in other words, not simply, to have access to the alphabetical kinui could serve many, many functions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you
But we
could
don't
get
make
that
your
from
own
the,
index.
from the Munich style presentation as well, but you would be getting it all of the Keter things together rather than saying I want all 10 Sfirot, but only with the letter Aleph, right? Now I want you to just see, it's not exactly in the Prezi in this way, but the very next page in this miscellany begins a distinct work, these Ilanot that are filled in. By the way, we can see not only from the hand, but by comparing this manuscript to the Munich manuscript, we can see that whoever made this, I think the most logical scenario is whoever made this maybe began with the Munich manuscript or something like it, but then continued to read other commentaries on the Sfirot and added, because there's more in Vatican 441 than simply what we find in Munich 119, using that as shorthand for the parallel witnesses. By the way, notice the Shulchan even shows up here, because it's Ot Shin. You see? So the Shulchan that we've seen in Ilanot, he is figured in the page of Ot Shin here. Now, this ends, and
Mizbeach under Mem.
let's check. Where we get Kaf Lamed Map. Well, we have the menorah. The menorah, yeah.
Cool.
Now, this work ends, that is called Seder HaIlan in the Munich manuscript. It's untitled in the Vatican manuscript. And then an untitled work begins on the very next page, which we have in a number of witnesses in libraries around the world. It's untitled. I've recently gave it a name also. I'm in the, this Adamic naming business these days. I've called it Kuntras Hatzurot HaKabbaliyot. Hi, Esther. Kuntras Hatzurot HaKabbaliyot, the booklet of Kabbalistic forms. Because it often, there's a reason why I'm mentioning it now, because we're actually going to get back to it when we look at this big Ilan. One of the questions that we ask of an artifact like this one that already came up a bit yesterday is we are not only interested in where the texts are coming from, but where is his repertoire of images coming from. This Ilan, we haven't started talking about it yet, but okay, it has the big arboreal figure in the center and the Ptolemaic cosmological diagram below it, but it has a lot of other stuff going on. There are so many sub-figures, secondary and tertiary figures, diagrams, as you like. Where are they from? And we didn't. I say we again, I'm not speaking in the royal we, my team of hardworking folks, the Ilanot project. We didn't know. And then we began finding witnesses of this work that I've just named, Kuntras Atzurot HaKabbaliot, which we're preparing for, I hope, a very, I can't say very soon, but it should be published quite soon by the Vatican.
A facsimile.
A facsimile with transcription and translation and notes.
Fantastic.
That's why it's taking a little longer. But basically the transcription and the translation are 99% ready. It's not going to have so many notes, but it will be in a, we're creating an edition that will then can be used by people who want to write about it, like articles. This is not the article about it.
I know I'm
Yes.
stating the obvious, but
Yes.
in a certain sense, I'm wondering about this as a genre
Mm-hmm.
in and of itself.
Yes.
This is like being a graphic designer, having the catalog of symbols,
Yes.
and knowing that when you're involved in a publication, which you know, lahavdil, it's today, but you're gonna bring a visual vocabulary to bear, and you're not gonna realize what you're doing, or you want to be more conscious about your project, so you go into that catalog of symbols,
Yeah.
and you create a visual language beyond text
For
in
sure.
order to really give
I
your
mean,
message. And so do we have before this any kind of cataloging of visual imagery on calendars, on you know, Talmudic diagramming?
What about the books of emblems that are
Well,
so
I was just going to say, but
prominent?
we, this is, I
This
was
is
just going to say,
Jewish
what
genre.
exactly, like,
Please.
we don't really, but this emerges in a period that, in which a genre is becoming increasingly popular in Italy and in Germany, and spreading beyond shortly thereafter. The emblem books, emblemata, these books that this is not a perfect fit, but an emblem book basically has some kind of iconic an image with some kind of explanation of that image that immediately follows. And
So these are catalogs that are, please correct me,
Sure.
Of engravings that are.
I mean, they started in manuscripts before they were printed, but it
Okay.
wasn't a long gestation.
And I think, you know, I don't know much about their use, but I think that sometimes you can find elements, certain iconographic elements, recombined. You know, you'll take a shield from one place, and like when we were looking at the putti, when we were looking at the cherubim on the, on
Which
you
were
say-
putti, right?
which were putti, yeah. I mean, in other words, you could turn to them to find models, and then, if you wanted to do your own, this is my book, the ex libris kind of thing, you could pick from these things and recombine them. But I don't know much more about the use of
I mean,
emblems.
medieval artists in general work for model books,
Hmm.
and they circulate among artists. So, I mean, I think what's unusual about this combination of text and image, if you do have like, corresponding text going along.
What we
with
do.
certain images, but they're definitely, the tradition of model books is very.
We have them
goes
for
back to
Hebrew,
late antiquity
but
as well.
Hebrew manuscripts from the Middle Ages that are model books for illustrations.
I don't know
No, we
about
don't
Jewish
have
books.
Hebrew ones.
Okay, that's
But,
what
I think the presumption is that
that they're shared.
Jewish artists use non-Jewish
Okay,
ones, or in
okay.
many cases, the artists were not Jews.
Right.
Right.
And for this, in this case,
So-
these are Kabbalistic diagrams, so they're not
Right.
going to be found in
Right.
an all-purpose,
Right,
uh,
right.
a book of.
Right. But they would have taken over the practice.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's how artists work. I mean, it's not,
So here we
people
have
don't make
this.
things up themselves. They're always basing themselves on earlier models.
And now this too is anthological in its character. Like this book, which we're preparing, has a number of images. You can see as I just scroll through it. This
It's
is
really a lot of text.
it's a lot of text, and they have their own. And then here it ends. It's not very long,
Fantastic.
but some of these texts are Abulafian, as David just mentioned, Abulafia. Some of them seem very indebted to Ma'arechet Elohut, which we spoke about yesterday. They're very philosophical. They're very Italian. I feel like some of the Hebrew, to even understand the Hebrew, you have to think of how it would sound in Italian. You know this phenomenon? Like, how would an Italian person say that? And as you'll see in just a moment, whoever created this, the original Magnificent Parchment, undoubtedly had at his disposal this work in some form, and you'll see
You mean the person who created the first 22 pages? Is
No.
No.
This is a different work now.
Okay.
Now you have the 22. It's kind of fantastic, even for our purposes, that they are one after another. Yeah, right. They follow one another in this particular miscellany, but there isn't any obvious connection between this manuscript up to whatever it is, page 109b, and what happens on 110a.
Who had what at his disposal? That was what I misunderstood.
The fashioner of this Ilan had this book
Hevanti.
at his disposal, and we'll see. I'm going to go back to the Prezi now, back to the future, back to the Prezi, and so the beginning of Seder Ilan, Da Ki Kol Echad. Now, if you're creating Vatican 441, what do you do with the introduction? It's not about any sfirot. I put this almost comic relief, really. It goes under Dalet, of course. Da Ki Kol Echad Me'Havayot. File Da under Dalet. Da. Right. That's so. This is how we work. And here you see Ot Aleph, and you have a look. I know Chochma or Keter. I don't know. I think this is what we got. Avir Kadmon Ehiyah Tzilut B'chulei. If you go over to here, Keter, you see Avir Kadmon Ehiyah, and so forth. This is just to show you kind of how it works. Now to our main act of session 4, this Ilan, which you can see is hard to appreciate at that. In that way, what you're not seeing here is Oxford. The old Neubauer number is 1949. It's to me easier to remember that than like additional Hunt manuscript D or whatever E. I always just call it 1949. That's 1949. That in Oxford, it is not the earliest, but also not the latest. It's arguably the best preserved, or at least, I think it's the best preserved of the older witnesses of this Ilan, and it was hard to make a call. I'm saying this to sort of share with you how it ended up being that the digital edition that I'm developing will use the Oxford manuscript as its sort of main splash page. This is what you're going to see first, but you also will hopefully be able to see some of the other witnesses. For example, this is the Vatican 598, Vatican Hebrew 598. It's beautiful, maybe even slightly more beautiful than the Oxford manuscript, although it has suffered a bit of wear and tear. In some places, it's a bit harder to read, and getting the Vatican to allow me to use it would undoubtedly require getting another grant from the Volkswagen Foundation. So we're going to kind of keep it simple. But you can see this is a real luxury manuscript. You see there's applications of gold here, the color, the execution is, by Jewish standards, really well.
That's sort of the guy, does he have a bird's head?
Yeah.
No.
What
This is
does it
Rabbi
say?
Kiva.
What does it say?
It says Dmut Arba Chayot Melamed Zchutan Shel Yisrael.
Do you think it was designed to be colored, or do you think that was a later addition?
I think that it was part of the original creation of this witness. As you'll see in a moment, we have hastier copies, including the only one that has a colophon from the middle of the 16th century that's in the British Library. That has no color. But color is clearly something that's used here, I think quite thoughtfully. The Vatican has more color than most witnesses do in the upper 2/3. We spoke about this before the session this morning, but it's very possible that that the use of color, this is a dragon, but I guess this is a not sufficiently high resolution image. I didn't want my Prezi to crash. You're not getting the full resolution of it, but we will be able to see more or less the same thing in other manuscripts, and this is just to give you a quick taste.
Who's making this and who is it for?
Very fine scribes making it for people who can afford to commission. I think most of the witnesses are like that. Now,
What's the Vatican number?
598. That is available online. You can see it online.
You believe these are made by, I mean, they're made by Jews for Jews?
Well, wait, I opened the session by saying that it seems like a Medici, that Blanes was getting one of these copied for a Medici. So I don't think that only Jews would have taken interest in such a thing
My question
in
is,
the early 16th century.
when you have this one,
Yeah.
which is nicely tinted and it's illuminated with little dots of gold, and you have the one that was copied for Kausavan. Given the affinity with Christian Hebraism and the real thirst for this kind of esoteric knowledge amongst Christian Hebrews,
Yes.
could one speculate that that Kabbalists who are making this for all the right reasons, for the Jewish reasons, are making maybe beautiful, but not embellished in this way. This seems to me to be extra.
Pimped out.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, it seems to me that if I were using this to dwell on the origin of the cosmos,
Yeah.
I wouldn't need a red Rabbi Akiva, I might want a form of Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah.
So my question to you would be, and to everybody would be, how wealthy are the wealthiest Jews of this society? Does it take a Medici, or are there Jews who could also just?
In my experience, the wealthy Jews who are spending this kind of money on expensive written work, manuscripts, even plaques, ketubot, they are spending things that they are able to be conspicuous with.
So that goes to the question of where is this going to be?
Yeah, can you imagine anyone who's taking Kabbalah seriously, that you're just hanging this on their wall, say, oh, come in and see my latest cosmological.
Well, what if you lay it on a banquet table?
And what? This is, I was in Oxford just a few weeks ago. Here's a nice picture for you. This Ilan.
This doesn't look like a few weeks ago. Look how much.
Oh, let's not talk about that. Yeah.
Or you stopped using
my-
Hebrew formula.
My wife was, I had, this was, it was like a relationship issue that had to be resolved. So it has been resolved in the direction of gray. Enough said. This is being videotaped. Here's another thing to cut out of the video. No, she's never going to watch.
I forget, I have no self-consciousness.
Oh man. Okay. It's okay. But I don't think Oxford pierced the Ilan and put these mounting strings on it. But at some point, God knows when, but perhaps a very long time ago, this Ilan was prepared for hanging, and that was kind of cool. Whenever I look at an Ilan, I always examine it very closely for signs of how it might have been mounted or hung, and this is about as clear as it gets. I think I may have even.
Yeah, but I mean, but that could be as late as, you know, a 19th century librarian's idea of what are we gonna do with this monster?
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. We have to carbon date the string, but yeah, right. But listen, I basically agree with you. I think I agree with what's being said here. I don't think that Kabbalists made this family of Ilanot as for other professional Kabbalists. Let's keep it simple.
Consumption.
I think they made it for conspicuous consumption, but conspicuous consumption can mean having it on display. It can mean in the Renaissance keeping it in a kind of cabinet of curiosities and bringing it out to show the guests, look what I have. This is an amazing thing. And it can be brought out by a wealthy Jew or by a wealthy Christian with kind of broad interests, as we know, was not so uncommon in this period.
Are you talking now about? Oh, sorry. No. Are you talking now about these later very fancy Ilanot? Or
I'm most
all
speaking
the
about
Ilanot?
this family.
Okay. Yeah,
This family.
This family specifically.
This is a family of manuscripts of which there are some dozen witnesses in various states of preservation. Some of them are complete. Some of them are fragmentary. As you can see, very in a bird's eye view on page 22 of the booklet. Right before JTS closed down, Sharon let me into a vault to look at some uncatalogued things in a drawer, and I found some fragments of this, as well as an autograph of the Ramchal. So that's nice to have friends at JTS.
I hope all those pictures are there when they open up
I
again.
hope so too, but at least I saw them and took pictures of them before they disappeared. Still, wow, I don't take lightly the privilege of being able to have a look at what's going on behind the librarian's desk. It doesn't happen everywhere. But as you can see, there's some amazing things. Bill Gross has the bottom half of the bottom third of one witness of this Ilan. And Bill himself was in Rome a number of years ago in the archives of the Jewish community of Rome, and he found the upper half of the lower third of the very same witness, without a doubt. And very recently, a lovely woman who's, that's such a sexist way of putting it, a great scholar who just got a position at CNRS in Paris, who does a lot of Hebrew manuscript work, CNRS. CNRS. I'm working on it. At least I don't call you Roger. But, yeah, so she's Roman herself. Her name is Emma Abate. And she visited Bill and visited the archives and made the same discovery. And now she has published the discovery only about a decade after Bill had made the same discovery. But in any case, this is a kind of an amazing find. And you see the JTS 104 and 105, although they are different parts of the Ilan, they seem to be in a different hand. They're not part of the same, they're not fragments of one Ilan. Right. You guys also have that blue mimeograph.
Yeah, I don't know what
which nobody knows. Nobody can say. They have a very strange 1950s era photostat, actual size witness. Nobody knows exactly where that came from. Now, and let me show you also.
Mark's inspiration.
Yeah.
Also, this is the British Library version witness. This British Library witness being the only one bearing a colophon that has been discovered to date. And it has no color. And it was created by a Jew whose name is, or was, David Darshan, felt relatively well-known itinerant Polish Kabbalist, who was in, here's the colophon, he says he's from Krakow. Yeah.
David ben HaGaon HaKadosh.
Why
Yeah,
is it
what
a
else?
different ink?
Yeah.
It does look dark. It almost looks like
he
it was.
crossed out the other guys.
Yeah, right. Huh? It
No,
could
no,
be the
I
man.
wrote this.
Right. Mandat,
it's
tzidkot Hashem, lahavauto,
Maybe to preserve his name, they
uledavka
copied
bo,
over it.
rashamti bichtav emet, brich rachmana de sa'ayan, areish, what does it say? Ve'ad.
מריש ועד כאן.
Okay.
מראשית ועד כאן.
Brich rachmana diyav chela, something to something zeira.
Safra, Zigura.
We, I guess it's not here. Maybe, where did he write it? I know that he writes that he copied it. Maybe it's higher up.
I don't think it's the same
Did-
hand.
You're making trouble for me, huh?
I'm sorry.
Mm,
You don't think it was just to double down on preserving his name?
No,
It looks like something scratched.
it does look
out.
like there was something.
I look at
Now,
how he write his shit. It's not the same. I don't think it's the same hand.
well, the shin is definitely different
The
here,
kuf
yeah,
looks the same.
of the name. The kuf here.
That kuf there looks the same.
This is a kuf. This is a kuf. Well, look, I'm not super invested in this issue, but the presumption has been to date that
Make
that
it
the David.
1556?
Correct. The David Darshan was in Modena in 1556, saw this Ilan, or saw an Ilan from this family of manuscripts and made this copy, which is now in the British Library. And because it was presumably made by David Darshan in Krakow, if you visit the Jewish museum called Polin in Warsaw and see their Kabbalah exhibit, you'll discover that the centerpiece is the Darshan Ilan, which they decided was Polish because it was copied by David Darshan and somehow represents Polish Kabbalah, right? Polish Wirtschaft. But in any case, also rewards a careful comparison. You can see, okay, there's no color. It's not too shabby though. Definitely better than I could do. And okay, and I wanted you to see some of these different ones. Oh, the last one that I think will be worth showing you is a unique witness fragment, which is in Leeds. And what's so cool about it is that it's not finished. So we can actually see a kind of a moment in the preparation or the copying of such an Ilan. What is already sketched out? What is already filled in? I mean, who knows how representative this is of how every scribe worked, but we basically see something that's, I don't know, halfway finished. Really, I think quite fascinating in that regard.
Beside the one on the bottom, there is no illustration.
Say again?
Beside the something on the left here, there is no illustration. I mean, there's no.
Right, now this
You have
is-
the Chayot,
That would be
Rabbi Akiva.
below this. You see, this fragment is from the middle of the parchment. Basically, it begins. What you're seeing is from here to here, with this dragon being, this guy. So that's why obviously too. I think it's fair to.
And on the other side is the Sulam.
Yeah. Yep. So this was keeping copyists busy for a while. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
So, a couple quick questions.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned the idea that maybe sometimes people would bring these out in cases or whatnot. Do you have any evidence of seeing these like mounted on rollers? Is that something that we find?
I haven't seen any. So you mean almost like Torah style?
Yeah, like
Haven't
time type of
haven't
thing,
seen
where
it.
you
No, I
could-
mean.
because I would imagine that if you're going to keep it in a case, you would maybe
Right.
want to roll through
Right.
each section.
Haven't
be
seen
able
any
to-
sign of that. No.
Like an Omer calendar?
Potentially. And the other question I had was, do we know if there was like a center of copying this specific model of Elon? Like, was Modena like a place where?
I don't think so. But
Or
again,
they just made their way all over
since we
Europe?
don't have colophons on any but the one in Modena. It
Yeah.
can't really, I can't say, but I think that they were circulating in northern Italy, probably in Florence and Venice and Modena and Ferrara.
But Shaul's question also, makes me think about the fact that if you're gonna do something, I mean, we have ones that are 30 feet
Yes,
long, right?
but later, yes.
But I mean, that requires an enormous work surface with compasses and T-squares. I mean, in other words, it's a major, you have to, as we saw from the one that you just showed us, it has to be, you can't do it, you can't work with one of these tables like a scribe who just keeps moving on. You have to start with the big picture, which does suggest a certain kind of drafting,
Or
studio.
workshop.
I want to say two quick things. I thought I had this as a. Do I have this as a PDF? It doesn't really matter.
I mean, you sort of wonder whether this is a group effort where there's the guy who just says, okay, you do the center and you start working,
Let me say two quick things. One is that of all of the copies of this Ilan that we found so far, I don't believe we found two that were executed by the same scribe. In other words, the same hand is, we ask whether there's a place where somebody's making copies of this. On the basis of the evidence as I know it today, I would have to say no, I under the presumption that we would see the same hand responsible. In the later, by the 19th century in North Africa, today, if you go around seeing Jewish museums and what's on auction and so forth, most of the Ilanot that you'll see are copies of made in North Africa of a particular manuscript family, and many of them were clearly executed by the same scribe. And this is already a kind of
An industry.
Yeah, a little cottage industry making. And I also recently found correspondence between Tunis and Marseille, between two Jews. One is ordering that the making of Ilanot, and even with prices from the beginning of the 20th century. So this is already a line of work and churning out multiple copies. The second thing I wanted to say is that in one manuscript in Oxford and in one manuscript at JTS, 1990, we found directions for making an Ilan with no pictures, but from reading it, it seemed to me that if you follow the directions, you might get something that looked kind of like this.
Okay.
But I wasn't going to do it. I made a transcription of the directions and shared it so far with David Friedman, who's my friend in Sfat, who makes Kabbalistic art, but is not a charlatan. He's actually a very knowledgeable guy and very thoughtful. And I thought he would be a good person to take a stab at it. So I gave him the transcription and asked him to go to work. And he produced some interesting initial sketches.
But does it say stuff like, divided into
Yes.
this number of parts?
Absolutely.
And then,
And
okay.
does it look like this, what he did?
Well, it's kind of eerie, actually. Some of the initial sketches that he did, I wonder if you really
That's very cool.
Let's see, Friedman, do I have it? Somewhere I should have the PDF of it. No. Is it this? Yeah. Well, these are some of his sketches, just on the basis of reading it. So he was trying to figure it out. So look, he came up with a tiferet with all of these radial lines coming out of it, and this is a very, very initial sketch. And I told him to stop because I actually think it would make a really cool documentary film to document the recreation of a circa 1500 Kabbalistic
Like they did with the
scroll.
roof of the Polish
Yeah,
synagogue.
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end, did you show him?
Yeah, I see, no, I'm trying to think if, when he did this, I don't think he'd seen this. I
This
tried.
is so cool.
But that's another grant, right, to get to make a documentary film about it.
You're gonna
I wanted to
involve a
just
lot
show
of people.
you,
I like that.
yeah, where's the 1990? Is it this? Yeah, I mean, this is הקדמה ראשונה, no, הקדמות ומפתחות שראוי לכל הנכנס לחוכמת הקבלה לדעת אותן. הקדמה ראשונה, צריך להאמין אמונה שלמה בסיבה הראשונה ובעשר ספירות. You have this הקדמה, and then you have a whole bunch of chapters that culminate with only in the last chapter with now it's time for you to make your own Ilan. It's kind of a graduation project to finish this course. And it's very technical. Okay, but I won't belabor the point. In any case, it's a fascinating thing that we have directions to make an Ilan which are with no illustrations.
Is it put into halachic language at all?
No, totally, and drafting language, geometrical language, using geometrical terminology that I was not familiar with. This is something that's like very technical. That last chapter. Now, let's take a look at what we've got here. I haven't said this yet. I mentioned before the session began, that although Sholem never published a word on Ilanot, when I examined his archives at the National Library, I found that he had some notes on Ilanot, a few lists that say what he's seen. He had a yellow pad with Ilanot at the top of the page, and a few scraps thrown into the folder. One of them relating to this Oxford manuscript, and he called it in German an enormous unknown text dafka, and estimated that it was some 30,000 words as a text, without even getting involved with the iconography. And now that we've just completed the transcription, we can tell you it has 33,000 words. Not too shabby, right? Not too shabby. We should have entered him in the jelly bean contest. Right? That's so he did pretty well. And the texts also deserves, although the texts are the texts that you would expect an Italian Kabbalist to be familiar with in the second half of the 15th century. At this point, it seems we haven't finished sourcing everything. It doesn't seem like, first of all, it is an anthology. It's not one text by one author. It's not one work that has been transferred to this matrix. But the general structure of this Ilan is home to a veritable miscellany of, or an anthology of Kabbalah up to roughly 1450. And with the same exception that I noted yesterday, what's not here? Zohar. If there's anything Zoharic here, it's in Rekanati. So it's just classic. Now the fact that there's nothing in here from after 1450 also suggests, that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been written in the early 16th century, but the texts that are used here suggest a kind of cutoff point for what made it into this anthological presentation. They are woven together with a fairly clear authorial or editorial voice. This is not only cut and pasted sections from Abu Lafia and the Ma'arechet and Shari Ora and Rekanati and Heichalot literature and weird, hard to find texts that nobody's ever exactly identified that are somewhere between Heichalot literature and early Kabbalah. And it's quite a gamut of texts, but with some additions by the ostensible author, editor, Elan maker, however we want to call the person responsible for this creation. And I think we're not there yet, but I think it's going to be, we'll eventually be able to say something about the position of the creator as it is suggested by the texts chosen and how they're arranged and the original contributions of the editor and an artist responsible for this artifact.
I'm just wondering if, on this Ilan, whether this was accidental or intentional, but in the center where you have the Ein Sof,
Mhm.
Ein Sof, is that meant to be a depiction of an eye? Or is that
This is absolutely meant to be an eye. Yeah. The the thing that I wondered about recently was whether, when you look at early modern anatomical representations of the eye, you also see something that actually this looks a lot like an eyeball with what do you call these in eye anatomy?
Lashes?
No, not eyelashes. The conjuncta or whatever. There's
A little leaf.
conjunctiva.
Conjunctiva.
Yeah. Let's see if I have.
But you see, it seems like an ironic commentary.
Here's
because
like a
this is supposed to be
diagram.
it's supposed to be a visualization, and you've got an eye right in the middle.
Yeah, for example, this is a 1572 anatomical diagram of an eye. Just whatever, quick comparison. I was able to open it fast.
Good.
I don't know if, in fact, I think it's rather unlikely that this whole thing is meant to be an eye, including this rather reminiscent thing. But there's no question, though, that Ein Sof here is figured as an eye, undoubtedly, and you can't forget something that I am about to publish in the European Journal of Jewish, what is it, like the EJJS or something,
studies.
Beltry's thing, on the evil eye and optical theory. That the eye is that the eye actively emanates
it's the
extramission. Yeah,
extra-
the vision is extramissive. That the eye is sending out rays, and that vision is haptic. You see something when your eye rays touch the object of sight. So it's not just that God is all-seeing, but that the font of emanation is the eye of God, that is out of which is flowing all of the subsequent levels of emanation.
Those of you who do art history, isn't there something called a mandorla?
Yes.
It's just the shape of the.
It's an amount.
It's
an
oval,
element.
it's a
It's
pointed.
just a shape.
Right.
It's
I
just the
see.
shape of the.
By the
like
way-
So it's that the eye doesn't
No,
count
it
as a
goes the other
mandorla,
way.
because it's vertical.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
Now, this is JTS K105, and it's the only witness that I've found so far that doesn't figure Ein Sof in this Ilan as an eye. It figures Ein Sof as a crown, or it's a crown atop. It's somehow in the arc.
It uses the black white, but reversed. It
Yeah,
uses
yeah.
the black on the bottom, right?
Well, it's usually semicircles each.
Yeah.
And here you have the crown atop Keter, and who knows what exactly. It's maybe just a circle of Ein Sof, but this is the exception rather than the rule. This is the one that is typical, and for whatever reason was not included.
Do you think the eye image is associated with the one eye of pure Rachamim and so on? The one-eyed image from
Ein
either
Pekicha,
or is that? I mean, I guess that depends on whether that's in Rekanati or whatever. But
that's a good question. I can't say.
Yeah.
Just a quick tour within Keter. As we'd expect by now, mostly appellations within the circles. This imagery of the fountain. Ma'ayan looks very much like fountains that you find in various piazza squares in Italy around 1500, and the flow of the divine effulgence, the shefa, is going down. This is water. It even has little fishies in it, if you were wondering if it was water. This is right, flowing into Chokhmah. I'm sure you've already noticed this Ilan adopts the popular, in Italy, model of the three sphirot that are one atop the other, rather than the triangulation that the Chayat was arguing for in this period. The Yetzer Hara, snake on Gevurah. You have body parts mentioned by name, like here you see Zroa small, which is an association, but again, not presented in any kind of representational
But
manner.
that, we saw that already in the sphere-like.
Just that it's inscribed Zroa small.
Zroa, you mean?
The same thing, yeah. Now,
Yeah, we keep seeing these mini.
that's what I want to talk about now. This gets me back to Vatican 441. Now, so there's obviously the main, like what's going on in the main, the main event. Well, what's the main event is there's this enormous Ilan on top of also a very significantly represented cosmological diagram of the Ptolemaic.
The last sphere above the chariot
Is Malchut.
Okay, so that's okay.
Malchut. We'll look at we'll look at it more in a second. I do definitely want to go there, but let's just take a moment to see the connection between that emblem book, the Kuntras Atzirot HaKabbaliyot, and our Magnificent Parchment. So, okay, wait, I was showing you. No. Go back. I wanted to show here. So this is, another kind of spherotic tree. It has some distinctive elements, the different placements of Malchut and why Yisod is under here, and also rather unusual. Yeah, the placement is different. But not just that. This may be seem a trivial point, but we rarely see what are referred to as the botanical additions to the spherotic tree.
This is more like a tree.
You were like really hoping for that to happen, right? There isn't much of it, but this is much more. And when Christians make trees, as you probably saw in some of the articles that I shared with you, they usually will throw in a leaf, something that looks a little vegetative. The Kabbalists are more austere in that regard, but here you see
It's also, this looks
some
more
leaves.
like a tree.
Like a
It
tree.
starts from the bottom
Yeah.
and works its way up, as opposed to most, tzirot, which look like and are designed to give you the insight that everything flows from inside
top
down.
Yeah, you could. I see what you're saying. You definitely have that upward.
Here you have roots,
movement.
you have tree, you have branches, and you have buds.
Now,
But the
wait a minute.
chronology is different. It doesn't go in any straight line. It says Yom Rishon is Tiferet. And then
yeah, it's weird. Now, the only way you can understand it is the text is somewhat abridged, but it is found in the various witnesses of the emblem book that we've seen. This is the one that's in the Vatican. There's some slightly nicer ones from an aesthetic point of view elsewhere, but you see it's the same. It's the same tree. It has at least some little hints of this botanical decoration with the same kinds of inscriptions, the days of the week, the unfamiliar placement of the sphirot, and then in the Vatican manuscript you have an explanation of what's going on here. And that explanation, as well as explanations of the other figures in the Vatican manuscript, is found in here as well, although usually the explanation has been kind of distilled and redacted to make it shorter than it is in the full emblem book. Here's another one that my associates Eliezer Baumgarten and Uri Safrai, the two postdocs that I'm working with at the moment, took interest in the last year or so. It is a different visualization of the sphirot. and it's discussed at some length in the emblem book as well. It is the Sfirot configured as a chuppah. And they wrote up a little article on it and submitted to JTS. I believe it has been accepted. So not JTS, JQR. So JQR is it's going to soon become the house journal of the Ilanot project. But
We're proud to do so.
yes, so you have and they've written a nice treatment of the history of this visualization. Cordovero discusses this the Ilan Chuppah, this array of the Sfirot as a chuppah, and the differences of opinion of how that works. And of course, this gets us back a little bit to the issue of male-female polarity and the symbolic significance of the fact that the chuppah is the literally like the technology for bringing the male and female together as one.
Chatanu Talmud Torah,
Ve'akala hi ha'atara, small. This has to do with where the chatan and kala stand under the chuppah. And there are even halachic debates in Italy in this period about whether the chatan is on the right or the left, and there the al pi Kabbalah, it's like this, or if not, this is already happening.
Right on the Ilan.
Right on the Ilan, yeah, exactly.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about why sometimes chesed and pachad as opposed to gedula and gvura are used as...
It doesn't seem to be meaningful.
Okay.
You even see people swapping them out in different copies of the same work.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to be... I mean, I know that probably like the Vilna Gaon would have me flogged for saying that, but... right? There's that funny story
other life
about like
cycles?
Shlomo Maimon asking the Vilna Gaon. You know that story? Probably apocryphal, that Shlomo Maimon had a momentary audience with the Vilna Gaon and said, "What's the difference?" The Vilna Gaon just said to him, "What's the difference between like achva ve'ahava or something like that?" And Shlomo Maimon said, "They're synonyms." And the Gaon said to his mishamish, "Have that guy flogged." That was his litmus test for heresy. If you say that something's a synonym, that means you're a maskil, right?
Interesting.
He wasn't wrong in that case.
Good. All right. Well, we'll spare you.
Takes you all out.
Are there other life cycle events?
In
that-
Ilanot.
Yeah, in Ilanot.
Other than marriage?
well,
is what you're asking?
Maybe, there's certainly Brit-oriented texts and iconography. Not necessarily saying this is the sandak and this is the pillow or whatever. They're not oriented towards the ritual as much as they are to the concept of Brit and its connection to the Brit Milah and its connection to the rainbow and so forth. Can't off the top of my head think of something else, but again, the chuppah, certainly once you see it, you're able to say, "Oh, I understand why the Kabbalists would take interest in the chuppah as a unification technology and use that as another way of configuring the Sfirot." This is again from 441. In Cordovero's Or Yakar, you also see it. This to me is a very Italian-looking tree here that represents the Etz Chaim and also shows up with the same inscription in Vatican 441. And
And the dates are that flank the other side?
in this case, not. But the other thing which I guess I didn't finish fully polishing the Prezi, but you see this strange little inscription, Sod Gan Ve'eden. Not that easy to understand on your own. I suppose indirectly gets back to the question of, was anyone really going to study this ever? And if you studied it, would you be able to comprehend the sources that were presented here? In many cases, I think the answer is yes, you could. In others like this, it'd be much harder to really understand what this was meant to tell you. Whereas here, you have the Sod Gan Ve'eden, and then a couple pages of explanation of what's going on here. So
okay.
it's significantly more developed.
So Gan and Eden are two separate things?
Yes. Sod Gan Ve'eden. Yes. And this, seems really crazy, but this is not unrelated to the bottom. I mean, this is of the Magnificent Parchment. This is the, but of course you can't. It's so incomparably, in this case, that represents a huge development over anything that we have in
You know, were
in the
Elliot
two rows.
Wolfson here, he would definitely note the phallic look
This?
of this, and you know.
No,
you don't
it's
think so?
not. It's not. It's just a tree.
Okay.
It's just a cigar.
Okay.
Do we think,
Yes.
the, later in the 19th century, Ari is very familiar with this, there's, when you have large artistic works that not Ilanot, but
Mhm.
but that are clearly reminiscent of that type of work, they typically come with books, explanatory books. There's some explanation you can garner from the text itself, but it's very clear that you have to refer to the text.
Yeah.
Who's the one I'm thinking of?
Rosenbaum,
Rose-
Wolf and
right.
Wolf and Rosenbaum.
Right, and also Van Gelder a little bit. But do we think that, do you think that the kinds of texts that you keep referring us to,
Yeah.
off the sides, that that's a genre in and of itself, and just they generally are not preserved together?
Look, it's hard to extrapolate from one Hebrew Kabbalistic emblem book and one family of manuscripts to a broader phenomenon. Also, because I can use that emblem book to help me understand some of these secondary illustrations or diagrams here, but ultimately they are secondary. They were this part of the repertoire used of this creator who had before him the full Kabbalistic library of Italy in the late 15th century. And one of the works on his bookshelves was undoubtedly a copy of this, what I call Kuntras Atzurot Kabbaliyot. And this is where he gets his text. This is where he gets at least some of his secondary diagrammatic materials from. And also, like I said, I'm still reluctant to say too much, but this is a person who clearly has his own creative and religious agenda, creative and religious, whatever. This is a person with a voice, and I think a person of some courage to create an artifact of this kind. I wanted it take you just for a couple of minutes. How are we doing for time in this session? It's 11. When does the session end?
This session.
11:30. So much for my great ambitions to get an early start on Kabbalat Ari. Probably ain't gonna happen. But let's just take a few more minutes to see maybe two more things. So, kind of looking for a moment back at, also bearing in mind what we saw yesterday in that Hepburn or Chevron Ilan. I want to look just for a second at the way things are structured here in terms of the lower worlds, the Merkava, the Ilan Sfirot as the visualization of God. But let's not move too quickly past the lower worlds, because they're inscribed with some care in this Ilan. There's some variation from Ilan from witness to witness, but basically what we're seeing here is the kind of, I would say, astrologically weighted representation of the Ptolemaic cosmos with the world, the sublunar world. You see the representation here of the moon. The sublunar realm is the realm of the four elements. Earth is, of course, at the center. The Galgalim going out through Venus and Mercury and the Sun and Mars and so forth. you'll notice certain interesting additions. These are called asterisms. They are representations of the stations of the moon. They're sometimes called lunar mansions.
Right.
And you can find them in their features of Arabic, medieval Arabic
Indeed.
astronomy. Ibn Ezra includes them in his works. They're selectively scattered here. These also, I thought maybe they were from like the Tao, no, what do you call it? The I Ching or something. They were hexagrams or something. I wasn't sure, and I realized they're asterisms. You have, from an aesthetic point of view, and interestingly represented mazalot, the signs of the zodiac, and these are also in most of the exemplars. But probably one of the most jaw-dropping things for most Jewish students of this will be the very rare sighting of a drawing of rabbis, and not just any rabbis, but we have an image of the four who entered Pardes. Ben Azai is already down.
But there was also Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah, well, I want to get there. I'm going to just walk you there. I promised, even in the
The one on the left is Rabbi Akiva. Because that's the same pose as he's in the Merkava.
He looks like Shlomo Amel. Yeah.
Now, I'm not even sure the best possible way to take you through this, though. But okay, let's say, ostensibly, okay, the four rabbis are more or less in line with the earth. They're with us, but on the one hand, below them, as the text wraps around this, you have a fairly complete transcription of an anonymous work that, not surprisingly, Idel has written something about. That is a transitional work between the Hechalot literature and early Kabbalah that combines a bit of both. About Arba'a shenichnesu lePardes bePe'ulotehem ובתפילותיהם והתפללו בטהרה והשתמשו בכתר וצופין וראו בהיכל האח משמרות מלאכים במעמדם וכולי. I don't want to get, and you hear about Ben Azai, הציץ במרכבה וכולי, Ben Zoma, and we finally get to Rabbi Akiva here on the bottom. נכנס בשלום ויצא בשלום ועליו נאמר משכני אחריך נרוצה ויעני המלך לחדריו היה שקול במידותיו ובדעותיו וכולי. And so this text continues about Rabbi Akiva, and then sort of directs you then back around,
Where's the fourth?
Oh, it's here. It's here.
Ben Azai, Ben Zoma.
Ben Zoma should be there. Let's see, Ben Azai, Ben Zoma. Let's see, where'd he go? I'll find it. I don't want to. Yeah, it's there, but
Maybe it's the other side of the wheel.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah, it's on the other side of town.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Acher, yeah, thank you. Yeah, very well done. I appreciate that. Then it takes you to a continuation of the text. And by the way, we haven't really talked about this, and it's hard to talk about it. How do you know even how to read around these things? This is not a linear text, but in fact, because this is a work that exists, that was copied in, it's very interesting to see how they have arrayed the text and how actually the array itself, if you're able to follow it, is a kind of guide that takes you through in a particular trajectory, because from where we were at 6 o'clock, we now have to come back to 9 o'clock and go through the Sha'ar and begin an ascent that takes us through these Hechalot. They're named as Hechalot on the other side.
Wow.
Hechal Bet, Hechal Gimel, Hechal Hey, Hechal Vav. You're going through all of the
Till
Hechalot.
you get to the Merkava.
And then you get all through the Hechalot, and you finally reach the Chayot of the Merkava, of the eagle and the ox, the lion and the Dmut Adam. And now Rabbi Akiva is among them. So he has made the ascent successfully, and he's standing, and he's even inscribed, Rabbi Akiva nichnas b'shalom, v'yatza b'shalom. Again here, in the text, one of the things that it says, one could make more of this or less of this, but it says, Heyeh ki Rabbi Akiva.
Wow.
So, I don't want to overread it, but it could be that at some level this text is part of the Ilan with its original charge of Heyeh ki Rabbi Akiva as a way of also suggesting to the contemplative gazer upon the Ilan or student of the Ilan that this is the invitation to make the journey. Heyeh ki Rabbi Akiva. You too should be like Rabbi Akiva.
What's with the date?
I'm sorry?
What's with that date?
No, the Galgal Arab.
Oh, this is that's a space as time, right? Like how
long
what's
this
the
lasts,
distance
the
from
distance.
one to the other is takshana.
Year.
How many years? It's like we say light years.
Light
How
years.
many light years do you have to
It's
go
in
from
Chagiga.
one? Yeah.
Can you go back to the figure of Rabbi Akiva and sort of zoom in on
Which
him?
one?
The one above, that one. Because it looks like within it, there's also, well, now you're too big.
Ah.
Yes.
Does it not look like there's also another figure of him with his head bowed? Or is that, you see that?
Here something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that,
Those
just my
hands.
imagination? No, too big, a little small.
No, okay.
Okay,
You're looking at the internal lines.
yeah,
in
looking at the internal lines, there's something inside
Something
him.
going on.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, this guy also has this kind of hands like that. I thought it was just
okay.
a robed
Okay.
gesture of some
Below
kind.
the hand.
What, sorry? what?
Something seems to be below the hand.
Here
Yeah.
or
Call
here?
Elliot Wilson, he'll tell you.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. Oh boy, we have something going on.
What this reminds me, I mean, it's irrelevant, but there are these images of dervishes, and when the dervish has lost, when the dervish stops dancing, he goes into that position,
Mm.
kind of, and then when he's connected,
It would be interesting. It'd be almost like a kind of a time lapse
It doesn't
representation.
work
Were
here,
it
yeah.
were it the case. Very briefly, then. Okay, you see, you have we haven't quite finished with the cosmological frame. You have even here. Zeu galgal המקיף והוא הנקרא ערבות, אין בו כוכב ובו חיות רגלי הכיסא ולהם 9 מראות רצונו לומר שאורם קבוע וכולי וכולי. So we're still kind of in this zone between the galgal hamazalot and the galgal hamakif, and when, let's say, if we get biblical, when the heavens open up to reveal what's beyond the heavens. So Ezekiel, and in this case Rabbi Akiva, who has taken the place of Ezekiel, is able to get a sight, at least from his point of view, of the rakia, which is pictured here. This is should be labeled. This is called there. He calls it the masach, but pretty sure it's also labeled somewhere as the rakia. Upon the rakia, a kind of throne chair, not as elaborate as what we saw in the Hepburn cabinet chair yesterday, but still a kind of nice piece of furniture, inscribed as the image of the throne, Dmut Kisei. And this is basically, you say, As we saw yesterday, this is where we would expect to see a representation of God. This is where, you know, the Empyrean would begin if this was Christian art. What is beyond the celestial heavens? What's in the divine realm? And here, very nicely, and with bonus points for maintaining symmetry, the Ilan is really sat just squarely on the kisei. So, you know,
And
sure.
it has the text also of their, well, both of Kavod Yaakov, but also above that, Val Demut HaKisei, Demut Kamar Adam. It says, you know, the image of, like a human form on top of it.
Nachon.
Yeah.
And then it references, but just verbally, to the image of Yaakov on the throne, which is interesting because this
Right.
artist was willing to make human faces, obviously, for
Right.
the Akiva and so on, but they didn't put that on the throne.
Right. Now
Even
there
though
are
they
some
have
weird
text
things,
of it.
like not a fish here, but some kind of winged.
Weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
What are the two loudspeakers on either side of Rabbi Akiva?
Where do you
One
see?
said Kol Navi,
Here now?
yeah, the Kolash.
Yeah, Kolo shel Rakia, Kolo shel Gavriel. It is like, you're right, they're like horns.
Yeah.
Right, well, I,
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay,
Yossi, could I ask you two questions?
absolutely.
They're just kind of by way of summing up. I feel like you've shown us a lot of stuff by now, and it's really kind of amazing. And I mean, there's, there are two ways I want to ask this. One is, when you see a new Ilan, how do you read it? And secondly, like, where do you start, and how do you make your way through this? Here's an Ilan. It's made of what? It has how many sheets? It's
Right.
divided in weight. It has this. It has which elements? It's
Yeah.
what type of material?
Right.
And then, but, you know, like, looking at this almost like a board game, and I'm wondering, like, you know, Chutes and Ladders or something. I don't know quite what it is. But, you know, and if you fall out, then, you know, you don't become Rabbi Akiva, you lose. But how, in those instructions of how to make an Ilan,
Yeah.
or how would the maker of an Ilan expect? So there are two ways of looking at it. How would you want us to look at an Ilan if we were to see something for the first time, based on the examples you've shown us? And then how would the maker of the Ilan want us to look at and make our way through an Ilan?
Excellent question. Well, just now, just to give you a sense of the suffering involved, this is part of our preparation for the transcription. Now, this will be even more precise and sophisticated in the digital edition, but this is not something that you figure out on your first pass. This requires some experimentation. Some parts of it are obvious, other parts are rather less so. But I guess let me try and get more directly to your question. I just couldn't resist showing you
That's amazing.
showing you this image. The first thing that I think I look at after you have some basic, very basic questions, I know that you to which you referred, is maybe at the heart of the division that I'm about to make in the workshop, is this classical Kabbalah or pre-Lurianic Kabbalah, or is it Lurianic Kabbalah? That's one very basic distinction. What's being visualized here? The way it is hard to say that these are all separate steps, because you could maybe separate them out analytically, but usually it's quite clear from a combination of just a bit of reading of the text and familiarity with the iconography of the different traditions, like what the answer to that question is. Like, yeah. I mean, at this point also I would have to say that having by now identified major families of Ilanot over the last 500 years, it's very unusual to find something that doesn't belong to one of the families that we know already. It happened not so long ago when the National Library shared with us a Kurdish Ilan that was not exactly like anything we'd ever seen before. But it's rare that we get something that's completely different. I will show you, especially in the next 2 sessions, I'll show you some one-offers or complete unicum Ilanot that remind me of the brother and the serious man who's working on his mysterious notebook with the secrets of the universe. And one of these artifacts that you find and you think either this was done by a very serious Kabbalist who nobody else in the world will ever understand, or by complete Meshugana, and or both. But in any case, for the most part, you can. Yeah, right, exactly. Thanks, Dave. For the most part, it's it's quite obvious, really, if it's Lurianic or pre-Lurianic, maybe because of the simple fact that all of us working full-time on this project have backgrounds in Jewish thought and cultural history and not in art history. We look very quickly at the texts and source the texts. Although I've become very friendly with art historians, and was really lucky that Katrin Kogman-Appel invited me to be part of the group of otherwise art historians who were at the Institute for Advanced Studies a few years ago. I'm still not an art historian. I still am waiting also to find an art historian who can really tell me something that I didn't know already about the iconography and these materials. Say, if you look at this, you need, this is just what I would expect to see in this workshop in northern Italy in this period, or it reminds me of this. I haven't had any big revelations come to me from my consultations with art historians. And it could just be because you see, like, the Ilan that I present to you is the masterpiece, also in aesthetic terms, of the genre, is nevertheless, not exactly something that in Florence circa 1500 would have won, best, artist of the year award, right? Like, this is, that's why I say it sounds terrible, but it's like great for Jews. This is great great art forged, by Jewish standards, and really impressive. And I think, even for a Medici, someone would say, wow, this is awesome. This is a kind of map of God. I want this in my home. It's full of the ancient wisdom, the Prisca Theologia. It's a totalizing representation. The Kabbalists really were onto something. They know the secrets. They're there. But again, I'm just saying the limits of art history, which is still largely a field dominated by people who are interested in pretty things, rather than images, and then in images that are not art.
Elaine doesn't agree with you. Sorry.
I know that there's been a change since the 80s, that there's significant interest now in the history of images in science, and since Murdoch and the Album of Science, and I provided some of that reading in my bibliography. But for the most part, that's still. Of course, there are people who are interested in the history of cartography. And that gets us a bit closer to the kind of thing that we're seeing here, I think, than the fine art of the period. Yeah.
I want to go back to, I'm sorry.
I have a question. I mean, we have thought of the creator of the text. We have thought of the person who gets the text.
Yeah.
Or the total Ilan.
Mm-hmm.
Can we think of the Ilan being used for a master Kabbalist teaching in private the essence of his knowledge at the time, not her knowledge?
Yeah. Yes. I think that pedagogy is one of the clear uses of Ilanot. I have my doubts that this particular one that's on the table was used for that purpose, but yesterday we saw in the Vatican Ilan on its verso, that inscription that seemed to be, I'm sending this to you that you may absorb this wisdom and so forth, as a kind of gift to the aspiring student. And as we'll see in our next session, in the Lurianic context, the most direct statement made by the preeminent Lurianic Kabbalist of the mid-17th century about Ilanot was that I made an Ilan for my students in Krakow.
But just look at the text that you quoted about the Jew sending it to the Medici.
Yes.
He says at the end, for us to enjoy it, or for us to...
That's right. To enjoy it together, to study it together.
The disciple learning from the master.
Yes. I mean,
it's because he knew how to write a good business letter.
It's true, and I mean, who knows exactly what that engagement would have been like, but it's. We spoke about yesterday Saint-Chapelle, and what do you do when you have something that is so richly communicating a message, but so impossible to access. Yeah. When you take the time to read these texts and understand how thoughtfully they were arrayed over these meters of parchment, you think, well, what a waste in a way. I mean, it's both beautiful and you think, well, who was going to figure out this puzzle and who was going to study the text as in this form? And I mean, I've already heard, I think I've even said it myself at the end of that article from Ferrara, maybe it really was enough that it was giving you this overload, and the fact that a scribe invested in creating it at this level of sophistication was like the investment in Saint-Chapelle, which does not seem to have depended upon people having binoculars sitting there, figuring out what each image meant. Somebody went to a lot of trouble and paid a lot of money to get craftspeople to create an image with meaning. It's not just looking through a kaleidoscope of colors. It's a message, but it's a message you can't read.
Now, see, on the Jewish side, not the Christian Kabbalist, is it likely that the owner of an Ilan like this would not have the source documents? The source.
Oh, you mean the sources that went into making the Ilan? Look, I mean, whoever made the original one of these had the full library of Kabbalah that was available in Italy in the middle of the 15th century.
So whoever commissioned it likely gave those source documents to the scribe?
No, well, who knows? I mean, it could be that the scribal Kabbalist who executed it had those in a personal collection. They weren't. It wasn't one person who had these works in the middle of the 15th century. And again, you could. It's 33,000 words of text, and maybe, I don't know, a dozen sources, Sifrei Iyun, and Abulafia, and the Ma'arechet, and Jikatila, but you could put these in one miscellany of Kabbalistic texts. You wouldn't need, the Library of Congress or something at your disposal. So.
Do we know how long it might have taken to complete something like this? It's so intricate on so many levels.
I
know it's a while.
I don't know, but I suppose it would. I mean, we saw what Darshan, ostensibly Darshan says he did in the middle of the 16th century while visiting Modena. He made what, in comparison to these witnesses, seems to be a somewhat hasty copy of his own, but still impressive. I don't know. I'm not a scribe, but I think just copying out the texts
Right.
here is
Just
a
wondering
job.
whether one scribe could make a number of these over the course of.
Well, we didn't. That's the thing I did mention, though. To the best of my knowledge, no two witnesses of this manuscript family show signs of having been written by the same scribe.
Mhm.
So multiple scribes are involved in the copying of this work seemingly over the course of centuries, which is also a kind of interesting bridge to our next session. We're not quite there yet, but this may be a point that's more of interest to people who are interested in Jewish thought than in, I don't know. Well, I'll just say it, and that is, even though I say the first thing I ask myself when I look at an Ilan is, well, what kind of Kabbalah is this? What are they visualizing? What kind of knowledge is being visualized here? It's not as if from the moment Lurianic Kabbalah comes on the scene, and or even from the moment when it becomes, you might say, hegemonic, although increasingly, again, thanks primarily to Edel, we think scholars are less inclined to say Lurianic Kabbalah displaced everything else once it achieved its dominance in the course of the 17th century. Still, I don't know, I suppose I can just say I was guilty of assuming for a long time that you have classical Kabbalah, Ilanot, and then Lurianic Kabbalah comes along and you have Lurianic Ilanot. Now that is still largely true, but we see that there are exceptions, and from, for example, the Ilanot that are made at a time when you would think people could have incorporated Lurianic Kabbalah but don't. Those are relatively few like that, but this one, if the dating is correct, of some of these witnesses, they're made even into the 18th century, which would be a time when we would be surprised to think of someone investing so much in a kind of obsolete representation of Kabbalistic knowledge. If it was commissioned in the 18th century as a luxury manuscript because it's beautiful and it has talismanic value, and particularly if it was commissioned by a non-Jewish patron, or who knows, it's all speculation.
By the time you get to the 18th century, I mean, these are overtaken by something Fataish and Fabesin. You have the Lurianic Ilanot, and those are mass-produced.
Well, they're not in this period, not yet.
Yeah.
But that still comes later.
They begin to circulate.
Yeah.
And as beautiful and as elegant as these are,
yeah.
I mean, they're, as we said, they're only accessible to a handful of wealthy people.
Right.
And the others, which are a great deal more line drawn. I'm sorry, I'm jumping into the next section.
No, you're good. No, but I mean, I think that something that David's saying that I would want to emphasize is also that this in particular represents an Ilan that I think is exceptional in so far as it is not made by Kabbalists for Kabbalists. My contention is, and maybe you saw it, I put in that article I recently published on practical Kabbalah and Kabbalah practices. I think I make that point. The point in that article that that Ilanot in are now you could take it as Roger suggested. It can be made as a beginner to learn. You could make an Ilan as part of your education. It could be made by the most accomplished master to share that knowledge. I don't think that any of the major manuscript families, by the way, just were the happy accidents of new students of Kabbalah. They are used by new students of Kabbalah as study aids, but they're not created by students who are putting them together piecemeal as they're reading their Kabbalistic treatises. So they can be beginner material, or aids to beginners, but made by the great experts. But they're made for Kabbalists, by Kabbalists, for Kabbalists. And I think that this is an exception to that rule. And I think that only much later, in the 19th century, do we see the commodification of the genre and a turn to producing Ilanot as amulets for sale and not for study, contemplation, pedagogy, mnemonics, whatever the myriad of uses that have been suggested till now. A couple of hands have come up.
Yeah, please.
Please, yeah, and then.
So yeah, I'm just thinking. I mean, a little while ago you talked about how is this read and all the different angles,
yes,
and directions that can go. And some of the articles you sent, of course, are also talking about what's added by diagramming or.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking about how Arthur Green has written about the Zohar and other Kabbalistic texts as being sort of like an equivalent of like stained glass and so on, but in terms of text. But what's interesting is that's true in terms of certain kinds. You can see that parallel of what he means in terms of certain kinds of images that are in the Zohar and stuff. But here, there's something actually in between, which is you actually have a visual, or partly visual and partly verbal explosion of the whole diagram. And there's two things that are included in that. One is the totalizing that we keep talking about, which I think is super important about the diagram. But the other equally important thing is that you zoom in on the total and you say, wow, look at all this. So you see all these, and the way that your eyes have to trace and choose, am I going to go this direction or that direction, and there's choices. And sometimes the choices are both these different amazing things, or sometimes one is the demonic direction and the other is. So that whole dynamic experience, to me, it feels like the same way that actually the stained glass depictions of biblical scenes or different things from the ecclesiastical imagination, and then how does that affect when you then hear or read biblical stories? On some level, you know that you're zooming in on one scene or one moment or a detail of something that's part of this giant, incredible panorama. So I feel like, maybe you could come to that without ever looking at an Ilan, but this certainly helps you to visualize that and helps so it may be something that the experience of reading the texts here, I'm just thinking about how that affects how you then hear, or whether it's oral or oral or reading it, texts that don't have diagrams in it and don't have images, but in a sense, you know now that you're entering this realm and you're zooming in somewhere and you're looking at a detail. So I'm just thinking about how that visual imagination is born and how that then changes how you look at texts that don't have explicit diagrams or visuals, like most printings of the Zohar and so on.
I mean, the Zohar is an undiagrammed book, by the way.
Right.
I mean, the Zohar. I reiterate Liebes's Lahachis formulation from Zohar and Eros. Maybe my favorite Liebes article, where he says, "Zohar eino sefer kabbali." The Zohar is not a Kabbalistic book, which that's funny, right? But what he means is very simple. He means that the typical Kabbalistic book is about giving you information. It's about giving you a map to the divine topography. It's written with that. We were speaking yesterday. I was speaking somebody about Buber. Maybe we were speaking about this horror, what Buber referred to as a kind of the Gnostic quality of Kabbalists, that hubris that the Kabbalists knew objectively what the topography of the divine was, what the structure of the divine world, and they had information to give you about it. I quite resonate with that critique of Kabbalah. It's a kind of a Shlomo head also, right? But here I am working on the maps. Shlomo used to always say, what's the difference between me and Zalman? Zalman always makes the maps. He says, maps, you have a map when you don't know your way around. If you know your way around, you don't need a map. So Shlomo would never do this map, here's the 4 worlds, these are the 10 sefirot, never. That's the last thing you would want to do, and here I am doing this. But,
It's amazing.
Right? But Liebes meant the Zohar isn't like that. The Zohar doesn't have any information for you. There's a reason why the Zohar doesn't say, let me tell you now about the sefirot, and this is how they work. The Zohar is in a kind of poetry, I think Liebes compared the Zohar to Miles Davis in that article.
Wow.
If he didn't, then I did, but whatever, he would have. It's already a guy like he went to Juilliard and then recorded Kind of Blue. Right? He had to leave everything he knew in Juilliard behind and then then do Kind of Blue. So the Zohar learned everything in Kabbalah and then forgot everything and made the Zohar, and it's not to give you information. And it's true that you won't find a Zohar with any diagrams. You just won't. You find that there are a couple places in the Zohar where there's the most minor graphical issue that comes up, but it's just not of interest, not part of that trip at all. But other than that response to what you said, it's fantastic, and hopefully by highlighting Rabbi Akiva and that narrative as part of the Ilan, also I gave just a little. I think it's not one of many examples, but at least is a feature of this Ilan that seems to also represent a kind of invitation, a turn to you, who seek to engage with this wisdom. Here I summon you and I give you. I'm kind of opening a pathway for you to follow and to explore. That I didn't take you through the upper reaches of the Ilan. The upper parts of the Ilan are intertextually related with the Rabbi Akiva story that's in the lower part of the Ilan. But the Rabbi Akiva narrative is not arrayed here. So you still get the sense that perhaps the idea was you begin with the Rabbi Akiva in our world, and you make the ascent, and you have you have some what do they call? What's that game that kids are all playing now, where they find in nature Pokemon, yeah, something like that.
Minecraft. No?
No, but Pokemon is you go around the city and there are things hidden for you to discover and.
No, he's right. Pokemon.
You're right. I didn't know, but I'm just saying maybe they're like the little Pokemons going on here.
Your kids already graduated
please,
from
and Roger also. Yes, please.
So this may be an unexpected connection, but the modernist Yiddish poet in New York, 1947, Aleph Leilis, wrote a poem called The God of Israel, which is about Jewish art. And I'm just going to read you two quick stanzas from it.
Good.
Translation by Benjamin and Barbara Harsham. The God of Israel is not rich. I saw the Sistine Chapel, Notre Dame, the Cathedral of Cologne. You can feast your eyes on them. You can enjoy. The God of Israel is stingy. He won't fill his museum with statues, paintings, altars, thrones, purple gowns, three-tiered crowns. He does not wish to live in a palais. The Jewish Museum has a modest display. A Hanukkah lamp, a curtain, a scroll, a spice box to fill in, a pointing hand, a menorah, a Torah crown, tools for circumcision, and an old ancient manuscript, and another manuscript, and another manuscript, tangled, bound, locked together, letters in love with letters. The poem goes on, but it repeats another manuscript, letters in love with letters. And I mean, look at what you were saying earlier about Jewish art forms and art historians not quite getting this. I mean, I think that Leilis post-Holocaust, writing from New York, but infuriated at the destruction of Europeans' Jewry. And the indifference of Europe. He's writing this testimony of art, about Jewish art that really does, your images today and yesterday have absolutely embodied.
You feel it's a bit of a pushback.
Oh, he's pushing back against European art, and he's saying Jewish art is this intricate formation of letters. I mean, he's talking about maybe manuscripts, but he's not talking about the content. He's talking about the image of letters and love with letters. And I mean, your roadmap here clarifies, but without the orange lines, there is this incredible beauty of this incomprehensible, non-linear sense of the image of letters that convey meaning, and there is linearity within the text, but it's presented in a way that is visual and confounds confounds the other Christian notions of art, I think,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
so I'm
Thank you.
wanting
I-
to bring Yiddish into the conversation.
I think with
Yeah,
that
good-
sublime
good dessert.
observation, really, it's very beautiful, sublime observation. Let us recess for lunch, and we will.
Oh, we have lunch now, do we?
Yes, I think we have lunch.